Hey there, today I have 3 recipes for you to create course completion certificates, like this one. So, 3 different ways to create certificates like this with varying degrees of prettiness and how they print and varying degrees of complexity. So there are time-coded links in the description to jump directly to any of the recipes should one of them seem tastier to you at the get-go. Recipe number 1 involves taking some code provided by the Articulate community and cutting and pasting it into your course in order to generate a course certificate. Certificate allows you to create a custom HTML web page, use a little bit of JavaScript, and create a course certificate. Recipe 3 involves creating a pretty PDF and doing some custom things in Adobe Acrobat in order to make a nice certificate.
Okay, as promised, 3 recipes for 3 ways to create course certificates in Storyline. The first recipe is printing Storyline content, Storyline slides directly into the browser. That's kind of a nice feature. Maybe you don't want a certificate, maybe you just want to print a slide. Recipe number 1 will teach you how to do that. Recipe number 2 prints a certificate in a custom HTML web page. So we open a URL that has a certificate.html file that we open in a new window. And last but not least, we're opening a custom PDF in a new window, similar to the HTML example, except now we have a PDF that allows us to print quite possibly the prettiest output option. So we're going to dive into each recipe and you can pick and choose the one that you think tastes the best. So recipe number 1 is printing a Storyline slide certificate. So if you notice here, I get to this slide and it loads a preview, and there we go. I have my certificate here, username here, today's date is here, and I'm able to print that out. Let's see how it works. So here is the course content slide that you saw, and then here is my certificate slide. In order to create this, I stole some JavaScript from the community. First up is this great tutorial for printing slides in Articulate Storyline 2 from the eLearning brothers. Now, I literally just used what they provide here, so definitely check out the eLearning brothers website, and they give you a handy package here that you can download. This package contains a Flash file that allows for the printing in the Flash output of Storyline. Notice here there's this Flash object that I added. That's what you get when you download the package from the eLearning brothers. I added it to my slide master, that way I could print any slide globally within my course by executing the JavaScript, which they also give you. So basically, you add the Flash object to any slide you want to print, in my case the slide master, because I want to be able to print everywhere, and then you execute this piece of JavaScript by copying and pasting it, and then you're able to print a slide from within Storyline. Now I have a couple extra JavaScript triggers, and that allows me to build the date out and get the user's name. So let's look at the first one really quick. So here I have a little bit of JavaScript that I'm not going to explain too deeply, but basically I get a new date object, I calculate the month from that object, the day from that object, the year from that object. So I use all that data to build a date string that will look similar to my date string down here in my Windows toolbar. Then I grab the Storyline player and I say, hey player, set your variable system date to date string. If you look down here, I have a system date variable reference that will be populated whenever that variable updates. Nice. The second bit of JavaScript gets the user's name. So again, we grab the Storyline player and we say, hey, my name is lmsapi.getStudentName. What that does, it says, hey, if you're in an LMS, get the student's name. So if this is not in an LMS, this wouldn't work. If you're not in an LMS or some system that's providing the student name through this parameter, you'll need to have your user type in the name in an input field in order to add it to the certificate. So keep that in mind. So then what I do is I create an array of the name by splitting it on the comma. Let me describe what this looks like. If I'm in an LMS, my name will be stored as something like Shelton, Nick. When I split a piece of text, this is a string of text on a comma, JavaScript says, hey, there's a comma, split it up at that comma. Then I have a zero-based array of the contents of the things that I had split out. Now, if for whatever reason it was Shelton, Nick, Adam, with my middle name, then I would have another item here in my array that would be index of 2 with Adam, but I don't have that. The LMS just gives me Shelton Nick like this. So then I create a new name that says, hey, array, get your item at the 1 index, which is Nick, and then add a space, and then add the stuff at index 0, which is my last name. So basically, I take whatever the LMS has, which is this, I chunk it up into an array, which then gives me these, and then I rebuild the name so that my first name is first and my last name is last. And then I say, hey player, I grabbed the storyline player earlier, I want to set the variable of new name to new name, which I calculated here. So this string new name is like, what is the name of the variable within storyline? And then this new name is the variable within JavaScript that I built up. That could be a little confusing, but these are not the same thing. This is the variable in storyline, and this is the value that I want to set it to. I could call this person's name, and then this one, person's name, and that's maybe a little less confusing. This is the variable that we're setting, and then this is the value that we're setting it to. I'll just leave that for now. So notice new name also variable reference. So whenever that updates, then that is going to display. So if I'm in an LMS, it's going to give me my name. If I'm not in an LMS, then it's just going to give me the default, which I have user's name here, ... So during your testing process, it's going to say user's name ... because you're not in an LMS. And if you're not in an LMS, then maybe on the slide before, you allow them to type in their name, and then you use that value to set the user's name here. So that is option 1, and notice if I come here into the browser, I'm gonna go and navigate back to the previous slide, and when it print happens, notice how it says user's name here. Well, that's because that's my default value, and it says that because I'm not in an LMS. One thing to note is you may have issues in testing this locally, so if you're having issues and these things aren't updating or it's not printing correctly, upload it to a web server. I might do a tutorial on setting up a local web server in a later video, but for now, if it's not working, upload it to your web server. Option 2 is opening a custom HTML certificate page. Now, notice that that print dialog came up pretty quickly. I probably could have improved that a little bit, but we open a new window with the HTML certificate. Notice it's going into an HTML certificate folder and then loading certificate.html. So in Storyline, to make that happen, we use the jump to URL or file action. In the location, I go to the HTML cert folder and open certificate.html. What is that linking to? And because I don't have an absolute URL, this is saying, hey, wherever my storyline output is, I want to look for a folder with this name, and then inside of that, a HTML file with this name, and open it. So the dangerous part is, if I publish again really quick, is that whenever you publish Storyline, here's my output, it deletes everything in here and then starts publishing from scratch. So every time I publish, if I had the HTML cert folder in there, it's going to be deleted. So what I'll normally do is create a programming folder structure with my custom stuff outside of it here that I can then copy and paste into my published output. Now, if I didn't paste these into the folder, let me go ahead and delete them really quick, go back to the browser, and then try to click the button. It's going to say, hey, we can't find that. That's because I republished and those folders weren't added. So once I come in here and I copy them and then paste them back in, I come back to Storyline, I can click the button and it opens just fine. So I'm not gonna give you all of the details of how this is made, but I'm gonna give you some of them. So basically I have a folder with 2 items in it. I have my certificate.html file and my certificate background cropped image. And this is a huge image, it's 300 dpi, and then I scale it down in my certificate.html file. So basically the way this works, and I'm just going to give you some of the tips and some of the high level, and you can dig into the code if you want, is I have some CSS at the top. I have my body content, which contains my background image, some text, some more text. This is where the learner name will show up, some extra text, and then the date. Now I could have just added like most of this except for the learner's name and the date to the image to save a little coding, but I just tried to make it more editable here. So after the content of the page, I have some JavaScript, but if you notice here, I'm making the date exactly the same way as in recipe 1 in Storyline. It's the exact same code, and I just copied and pasted that in here. Then I say, hey, if this window was opened by another window, and that window has a getPlayer function, meaning it's Storyline, meaning, hey, if this was opened by Storyline, then get that player, and then get the variable for the new name, which here I am running the same API call to get the name from the LMS. So if we're on an LMS, it's gonna grab the value from Storyline that we got from the LMS. And then here I just say, hey, if they're not in Storyline, just set new name as not in Storyline. Then what I do is I run a document.getElement by ID, which updates the div with an ID of date right here with the content that I generated for the date, which is the same thing that I copied. So this text right here gets overwritten by the actual date, and then the name gets overwritten by the actual name, and then I say window.print. That's why it's popping up so quickly. So in a nutshell, that's how this is working. Notice here it's saying user's name here. If I come back to Storyline and look at my variable, well, that's my default variable. Notice the not in Storyline option. So if I were to come into my publish folder and then open this certificate directly, and it's doing the same thing, but now it's saying not in Storyline, and that's because I didn't open it from within Storyline. So now you can see where this is coming into play. This part says, hey, if you opened it from Storyline, basically, then set the new name to the variable new name. So notice, if I open it from Storyline, I do get that default value. And if I were in an LMS, I would get the updated LMS value because this JavaScript would have run before we open the certificate. That's a pretty cool way. Notice that it prints slightly better, in my opinion. Actually, it prints pretty dang good. There's this little gap at the bottom, but it prints pretty dang good. I would say better than the Storyline print option. Now, this isn't a web development tutorial, but I want to give you one tip to help you really kind of figure this stuff out a little faster, and that is basic CSS and what you can do with Chrome Developer Tools. So what I'll normally do is I basically want to know where to put this text because this is HTML. Notice how I can highlight it and select it and all that stuff. So what I will do is anything that I'm positioning on top of the background image, I will give it a position of absolute. So here's my bar text, my learner name, my extra text, and my date. It has an absolute position. And then I will set it to a top and left position and give it a width and a height. Another thing that I do is I'll have a 1 pix solid red border, and I'm just gonna make it 3 pixels so it stands out a little bit for the tutorial. And then here I'm overriding it with a border of none, but if I remove this, save, here now I have a red border around this guy, so I can kind of see how wide it is and where it's being positioned and things like that. So this is kind of handy, but what I will typically do for these objects is I'll say top 0 pixels, left 0 pixels, width, I don't know, 500 pixels, and then height 70 pixels, right? Because I'm just kind of eyeballing. I know I want it to come in here. So this is what I would see before I really position this thing perfectly. And then what you can do is you can come to the developer tools. So if I go to view, developer, developer tools, now I have the developer tools, which will allow me to get my CSS pretty accurate. And what I can do with the developer tools is I can click this inspect button right here. When I click that, now notice how I hover over specific pieces of text that's highlighting it. Well, I want to position this object, so I'm going to click that, and now over here on the right, I have kind of the CSS Explorer. So what I can do is I can click the left property, and I don't want it to be 0 pixels. I obviously need to move it to the right, so I can push the up arrow, and now notice how it's moving to the right. I could type a value in, but the up arrow is easier to me. If I hold shift, now it moves over more units. So now I'm moving it to the right. That feels pretty good. I'm actually going to get rid of the border. I don't want that. I'm going to say none. Yeah, there, that looks better. So I moved it to the left. Now I need to move it down from the top. Let's see. That's looking pretty good. It's wrapping. That means I need to make it wider. And there, now it's wider. And that's pretty centered. And then I can move it down from the top some more. Let me click in here. So now I've positioned it in my browser. I'm not actually editing the CSS at all. I'm just taking advantage of the in-browser developer tools to tweak my CSS. And then what I can do is I can come in here and I can copy this CSS right here, come into my file and then paste it. And there we go. I've used my browser to get position options and things like that for my CSS and saved a little time. And I was actually visually editing the code, which is really handy. I saved this. Now it refreshes, boom, it's exactly where it was positioned based on me editing here. And I can still come in and move it around. I can do this for every object, so not in Storyline. I can come here and say, oh, I want it to be down here instead, and then I want this one. I want it to be here, and there you go. I just adjusted that. I would come in here and copy the CSS and paste it back into my file and overwrite it. So that's a very handy tip. And that's basically, in a nutshell, how you create a custom HTML certificate. Last but not least, quite possibly the most delicious recipe in the bunch is printing a certificate that is a PDF. This works almost exactly like the HTML version, where I'm using the jump to URL file action, and then I'm going into the PDF cert folder and then opening certificate.pdf. Now again, I've copied and pasted this PDF_cert into my programming output. That way it will be there and will open successfully. And it opens the PDF and that looks beautiful. It says type your name here and it got today's date. If I go to the PDF is, oh my gosh, it prints so well, it fits so well. I don't need to make it fit to page. And there I have a full screen, beautiful certificate. I only have a black and white printer, so it would look even better. It says type your name here. Let me just go ahead and type my name. There we go. And I press Control P to print it, and beautiful. Now you may be wondering how to figure it out. So I'm going to open, it's basically, if you can do the JavaScript and Storyline that I showed you earlier, you can add a little bit of JavaScript to a PDF in order to make it do some pretty cool things. I'm going to open up my page thumbnails, that way we can see everything, and then I'm going to go to View, Tools, Prepare Form, Open, so we can see our PDF form objects. So if you look here, we have two PDF form objects. We have the username and the date. So what we want to do, let's do a Storyline interaction. When the PDF opens, I want to update the date field with today's date. Now, in order to action when a PDF page opens, I right-click the page thumbnail and I go to Page Properties. That opens a dialog box which has actions, the very default page open action, and then I want to a JavaScript. Now I'm not going to actually add it because I already have it in here, and once I have the action in here, I can click it and then click edit to see what it does. And look at that, it is more simple than the code in Storyline. It's beautiful. So what we're doing here is running JavaScript within a PDF, and we create, and date is equal to this.getField date. So this is saying this is the PDF document, and then we're finding the field named date, and capitalization is important. Notice it's capital D-A-T-E. So we do the same thing. This grabs a reference to that field. And then we say, hey, we want to set that field by running a print date utility, which will print the date in this format based on a new JavaScript date object. Just come in here and copy and paste this code into your project and it will work lovely. If I were to come in and open this PDF in a week, this date's going to update with that date, which is beautiful. And here, notice when I click type your name here, it disappears, so I don't have to highlight it and delete, and I can just type my name. That's just a small piece of pretty user experience. Also, it's kind of, I would type their name here, but I'm just making it foolproof. So in order to do that, I have like a Storyline trigger. So whenever they click that form field, I want to empty it out. So my page loads, my action is actually when they click the thing. So let's right click that object in Acrobat and go to its properties, and look at that. We can add actions too. And the default trigger is mouse up, which means when you click something and release the mouse, I want to, again, I could run JavaScript here, but I actually don't want to. I could do all sorts of things. There are a lot of cool things to play around with here, but what I want to do is I want to reset the form. There it is. I'm not going to add it because I already have it, so let's just edit what I have here. And it's literally, what form objects do you want to reset? Well, I don't want the date to reset. I just want to reset the username. I click OK, I close, and now I have these actions that allow me to do these things in the PDF dynamically. So let's say you don't feel comfortable manually adding these fields in Acrobat. Well, you can come steal mine. Go back to Form View, go to View, Tools, Prepare Form, Open, and now I can copy and paste these text boxes. So I could come into the Rastiki Scorn poster, and then I also want to go to Form View. That way I am preparing a form on this one as well. I just want to save a copy with form. That way I don't overwrite the first one. It's loading, it's evaluating, it's trying to determine if it should add some form fields itself. Acrobat is really good. So I come in here and then I can copy my name field and then paste it, and there we go. Now I can type my name on the Rastiki Scorn poster if I wanted to, which I would never do because it's brilliant and I had nothing to do with it. So that is 3 ways to create certificates in Storyline. Don't forget you could print any slide in Storyline using that eLearning Brothers tool. I will provide links to everything in the notes below. Please like, subscribe, share, tell everyone, sing from the mountaintops how beautiful your course certificates are. Make course certificates for fun just so you can hang them out in your office or give them to your significant other. There are many ways to skin a cat, but figure out which way you like to skin a cat best. Do it that way and teach others. So thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to see in the future, and I might use your idea for a tutorial. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends. Thanks for your time. Nick out.